I've worked on so many different types of games, throughout my career. The Myst style of storytelling, which essentially is kind of like explore and reveal. Um, that's something that's always appealed to me. The exploration aspect of storytelling, where you can kind of unravel the story as you explore the world or explore everything else. I mean, that's in a lot of ways probably one of the oldest forms of storytelling. And for me, all these different games tell a story, in a different way. Like all the cinematics, I did all the cinematic, or I was the art director and graphic supervisor, as well as made a lot of the cinematics for all the Red Alert games and Command and Conquer games and other games for Westwood. And each of those were very highly planned out. Because we had to shoot things on a green screen. We had to build out the sets according to, various designs. I mean, there was a lot of interchangeable parts that had to fit together at the end of that. But they all amounted to being able to tell little stories. The thing is with the cinematic end of it, you're telling a mission. It's a mission basically, and you're telling the player, the game is that you have to do A, B, and C in order to do this, and getting a chance to see that whole story altogether prior to actually working on this sort of thing was really a lot of fun. And there were a lot of people who were involved in it, and everybody had sort of a different take on certain stories. And invariably, a lot of those stories would have been told by the two guys who actually ran the company. They came up with a lot of the ideas and then passed it on down. But for me, telling a story is kind of where you're revealing so many different aspects of what it is that you as a writer or an artist are trying to convey to a user. You want to pull people into it, and as I said before, for exploration, that is what pulls me into virtually everything. I mean, I'm a really big love science fiction, and I like to be excited visually, but telling that story, the person, the people that are involved in that story, it's not just you. There are other people that help, round out what that story is as you're playing in the characters, and it's kind of more of an intuitive thing, I guess you could say. I've never really had put it to words before, but when I did Zed, for instance, the story I wanted to tell was of a man who I had known who was an early mentor of mine. And he kind of helped me out get started as an artist back in the late 70s, actually, while I was still in the Navy. And when I got a call from a friend of his who knew me from way back then, and told me that he was in the process of probably going to pass away fairly quickly. And I got a chance to go visit him, and he didn't remember who I was, which was kind of sad because he had dementia, and it was, pretty far along by the time I had seen him. And the thing I noticed was that he was like really frustrated with himself all the time because he couldn't remember how to draw. And that alone was like very, very difficult to deal with from a standpoint of having been his friend for a couple of years that I knew him early on. And so I wanted to tell that story about what would it be like to suddenly, if you've done something your entire life and you can't remember how to do it anymore. And Zed was based on that concept where I wanted to tell a story about a man who wanted to remember so badly how to do what he did his entire life, which was art, so he can make a children's book for his granddaughter, because he was never going to get a chance to meet her because he probably would be dead by the time she was born and never would live long enough to be able to let her enjoy whatever he produced. But he wanted to leave her that legacy, and I wanted to tell his story. And I came up with the idea of writing him, him telling the story through his dreams, and you get a chance to play it through his dreams, and then help him put together that book. And for me, that was taking something from your own life and then kind of extrapolating it in a really kind of fantastical way, to make it a little bit more, I guess, otherworldly, to give it a little bit better term. And for me, that's important. And I've done some games like that before with other companies, but never anything quite as personal as that was. And that was a very personal game for me. And I think that anytime you're telling a story, you really have to reflect a little bit of yourself into it. And because I think that's really probably one of the most important elements of it. You pull out of your own life, and because we go through so many different things in our lives, and especially when you start getting close to 70, you start noticing that there's lots of chapters in there, and each of those chapters, there's something that could be dredged out of there to be able to wrap a story around. And I think that's probably the most important thing is, you're pulling a little bit of yourself into it and the people involved in your life.